Welcome back to Comic Book School. For those of you who are joining us, this is our community meeting. We do this about once a month to provide you updates on what we're doing within our community. Some of it will be related directly to the challenge. Some of it will be on how we're building our community, but all of it will be focused on you and the craft and business of making comics. My name is Buddy Scalera. I'm the founder of Comic Book School, and I am joined here with what could best be described as the murderer's row of top talent emerging out of this community and the next generation of Eisner Award winners. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Mr. Chris Burgos, award-winning Chris Burgos. Chris, tell them who you are for the people who don't already know about your award-winning ways.
For those that don't know me, I'm Chris Burgos. I'm the current writer and editor over at Tales Beyond, my own publishing label. Last anthology, I was with the Comic Book School. I did 2 stories. One was Ragnarok Come, which is, as Buddy has said, an award-winning story, and it is within the award-winning anthology that we handed out, Panel 1, and the other story was Teddy's. So, yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Chris. And speaking of award-winning anthologies, can I get an introduction from Ari Rubin, one of the editors who led us to an award-winning anthology? Ari, give it a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm A.A. Rubin. You can call me Ari. I'm one of the editors on the book, along with D. Alley. Yes, award-winning anthology, and we always want to thank Rob Anderson for running those awards as well, the Independent Creator Awards. Check him out. Yeah, I also had 2 stories in the anthology. I had a comic story, Mr. Stupendous, with Ariel Lupkin and Chris Dokolomansky. And I also had a flash fiction story, The Duel, with Mike Ponce, and we'll be talking much more about flash fiction later today in this call.
I cannot wait, because you know what? Flash fiction was something I didn't even know that I had done until Ari taught me that I'd actually done it already. So I'm super excited to know that we're going to be learning, even at my age, new things. And saving the best for last, someone I call Aaron, who is also known as D. Alley, award-winning editor of an anthology. Aaron, give yourself a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dee Alley. I am the editor of the Panel 1 anthology, along with Ari and A.A. Rubin. You can get that download on our website for free. And then we are currently running our next 8-page challenge in the hopes that we can get a whole bunch more people to come into the community and talk about comics and making comics and all the things that we love. So.
Thank you very much. Now, it is worth noting, Dee, that we consider ourselves a community. And I think the important thing about that is that Comic Book School does not have a profit model. We don't charge for any of the education that we provide, nor do we pay for anything that we ask you guys to help us as volunteers. So everybody see here is part of a volunteer group, and we have a tech group. We'll be giving an update on what their work is done. We have a design team. We have now we have a social media lead. So we're growing, and the reason this is important, is because prior to the pandemic, we would meet at conventions, but I do recognize that some of us are geographically advantaged. So if you live in the New York, New Jersey area, it was easy for you to go to the parties, right, Chris? You go to the after events and different things like that. But there are a lot of talented creators, like Dee Alley right now is not based in an area where she could just whip out and meet you at a pub. So we're building this virtual community. We do know we have people all over the world. The whole planet is covered. And we're trying to really make a community of very vertical interest of people who want to create comics. And I want to note, before we get too deep into this, most of us have focused our conversation on the writing, the art, the coloring, so on and so forth. But I was thinking today, there are great numbers of people who carve out a 25, 30-year career in comic books, never having created an actual comic book. And this is a publishing business. And now, of course, it's also a media business. And you can love comics and find your way into comics through any of these channels. So what we do want to make sure is that you're aware that no matter how you get into comics is a good way. But ultimately, this community is built not just around expressing yourself. If you want to express yourself and explore your ideas, you can totally do that. But we're also trying to help you to network and build a pathway to a career. So the updates we do tonight will be about that career. We know some of you will join us, some of you will watch us later on YouTube. If you don't know already, we have a YouTube channel for Comic Book School. Go ahead and subscribe to that so you're part of the alerts. If you're not part of the newsletter, sign up. And if you're not on the message boards, why not? It is the best place to go. We did make a choice not to go on one of the other social networks. It's a choice we made, and I think it was the right choice. So we have a lot of updates. So I'm going to lead with that one because I think that's kind of important. We have message boards which are rooted at comicbookschool.com and a subdomain called create.comicbookschool.com. They're message boards. Sometimes we call them forums. And it is the place where we place all of our content for feedback. And it's really important for us to place our materials there according to the steps. We'll talk about the steps later. And Chris, I'm about to prompt you and Ari to just talk about your experience of giving and receiving feedback. But this is really important because if you work in a void, you only get the benefit of the people who are around you who can look at your materials. And, you know, I'm sure grandma and your mom will be real happy that you made a comic and they'll just applaud you for, oh yeah, you completed it, you know. But this community is really about rigorous feedback, and you don't have to make those changes, but you should listen. So, Chris, let me go to you first. What was your experience in how you collected that feedback and how you incorporated it into your stories that actually made it better?
That's actually pretty easy. One of the things that I do is I tend to overwrite, and I'll go into my script and I'll start writing dialogue and everything. And I do have a film background, so I will have like a really nice beefy chunk of dialogue or something for a character. And when I show that to, like you said, mom or friends that don't know, they can't really give me any feedback other than, oh man, that was really well said, whatever, cool. But then when I hand it to the community, when I posted up stuff on forums, people are able to tell me stuff like, that's too much dialogue. You need to find out what the meat of that dialogue is and make it concise and trim it and trim the fat and stuff like that, that, you know, you might not see as you're writing, and people who you're close to who don't have that experience and that background to help you edit like that, they won't see it either. So giving it to the community of all these writers and artists and everything, even an artist sometimes will tell you, it's like, I got to make a big space on a panel for that piece of dialogue. You're really limiting my artistic abilities. And that's just something that can really hamper, you know, the creation of the comic. And so being able to get that feedback from all of the, you know, the community and the peers that we have on the community is a really nice plus to the comic book school and the whole comic creation process for these anthologies.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And Ari, you were big into the message boards for your two stories because I know you did too. You just want to talk real quick about your experience as well?
Yep. So I think that one of the other things that's great, I actually had two really good experiences with the message boards in terms of getting feedback. The first one was in with my comic, Mr. Stupendous. I had a very specific question about a turn and whether I needed to put a page, and it was a piece of dialogue, whether it needed to go, I think it was on either page 5 or page 6, something like that. And I posted it up there and I asked for people's feedback and I said, do you think this needs to go before the page turn or after the page turn? And it's a really like nitty gritty question that you're not going to ask like somebody who's not a writer or an artist or you know, they're not going to be able, they're not really even going to understand why you're asking that question, to tell you the truth. But I posted it, and actually not everyone agreed because it was had, you know, some people thought it should go someplace, some people thought it should go the other place. But then I got feedback from the community, but I also was able to get feedback from Kathy Kirch, who did the writing coaching for our last anthology. And
Right.
between that, just by having that conversation, it really clarified for me what I needed to do. And actually, similar to Chris, I ended up taking out a line of dialogue in that scene, which was ancillary to the other question, but it actually resolved what I was talking about. So to be able to get the feedback both from the community and from the professionals that we bring in to help, and to be able to ask those kinds of specific questions, technical questions you might have, um, that people who aren't creators aren't going to find interesting, but people who are creators are going to really get into that on that level. And you're going to be able to have that kind of in detail feedback and be able to ask those kinds of craft questions to other people who are doing the same thing as you, which is different than what you might get just from a group outside of a community who not in a community like this. In terms of the flash fiction story, um, that one was more just within the community, and there was just talking through similar. There wasn't a specific thing like that, but I was a writing major in college many years ago, longer than I would care to admit. And one of the things that I had missed after having graduated from that program with a writing degree was the workshop.
Hmm.
Was to have the workshop where you went in and you presented your writing, your story, whatever you were working on, and everyone in the class gave you feedback. All the other writers and the teacher, obviously, the professor would give you feedback and that kind of thing. And I think that this community on the message boards functions in a similar way. I know
Yeah, I
that,
agree.
yeah.
So, circling back around, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was the evolution of our forum. So, when we first launched it, it's basically Aaron and me, and even before you got involved, Ari, we were just building it in real time. We launched on Buddy Press. We recognized that there were some significant limitations, both in design and layout, and in the fact that it's not terribly well supported. We made a conscious decision, brought together a tech council, sub-council, and I'll talk about that in a second. Buddy Boss is not perfect. And Rob has noted, there's some really basic features like a like button that are just not there. And we are definitely looking into how to make those things better. If you guys have any technical background and you want to join the tech team, currently, before he goes on hiatus, Kevin is leading that for us. And I'll just transition and say that the tech team did exhaustive research on how to add some community features. And I'm here to announce today that I installed Gamey Press to the website. It is a points-based system based on activity. And it's also a badging system and leaderboard system. So I want to thank Kevin, Mike Ponce, and James McGill for going through all the details, but I implemented it today. I am fully transparent in saying that sometimes I will exhaustively research all of the different features, know how it works before I launch it. This time I did, I just turned it on. So at some point, you'll start to see it functioning. The council members will get an exclusive badge. Each of the council, yes, Mike Woot, thank you. Each of the council members at some point will see a badge aligned to their profile. It might even be now. I don't even know if maybe when you make your next post, it'll be up there immediately. But that will help the community to know who the council leads are, who the tech leads are, who the social leads are. And I think that's really important because as the community starts to grow, we want people to know where they can go. Right now, Rob is running a small private group called the New Mutants of New Creators. And we want to be able to give Rob a special badge for that, just so that people come in, they go, oh, he's who he is. So we're going to, you'll sort of the Twitter equivalent of a little blue check mark. I actually designed the badges myself, which are intended to make Aaron cringe. I'm going to use Comic Sans because I understand that that's comic-y. No, actually I use Stamp as my font. It's all caps and it's beautiful. But I needed to make something really quick. Anyway, guys, I think the key thing right now is that we are seeing the growth of this forum. So the more you're putting into it, we're seeing that this is a functional thing. And let me just reiterate, Facebook is closing forums left and right. Google literally just closed down more tools that used to be very familiar to you. So one of the big reasons that we decided to go on our own hosted forum was specifically to control our destiny. Don't worry, Mike, I will send you all of my graphics and Comic Sans immediately. But thank you to Rob for your generous feedback on saying we need something. And it just happened that the tech team was working on this. So the point system is coming. The badging system is in place. I will be leaning on all of you to help me grow that a little bit. Now, one of the things that you guys have to keep in mind is the more you use the boards, the better they become. So we had a couple of questions for office hours on Friday, and this is just a new thing. We just want to open it up. You have questions, we'll give you answers, and they're sometimes long form answers that are too long for the message board. But it's a great opportunity for you to go in there and just find out what's going on, right? Or say, I have an idea, which is perfect. We have a guest, and I'll announce it in a minute, where this is a really important guest for you as creators. And I just cannot underscore enough how important it is for you to get involved, because it's more than just about making comic books. It is about making a career in comic books. It's the craft and the business. We're going to focus on the business. But before I go into that part, use the message boards to post some questions. If you don't post the questions in the message board, we're not going to read them during the live show anymore. And the problem with reading them during the live show is if you have a question, then we have to react and read them. It doesn't give us any time to formulate thoughts. And that's not really the best way for a pro to give you an answer. They might need a little time to digest it. So there is a message board for Tom Pyre and Jamal Eigel. Please go in there. I will note that next week, which is Tuesday, will be the second of a two-parter, or at least what we thought was going to be a two-parter. It's actually going to turn into a three-parter. You're hearing it live. The council's just hearing it with me. What I agreed to with Tom Pyre. So just real quick, Tom Pyre is one of the founding editors. You see him there in the bottom corner. He is one of the founding editors at Vertigo. Then he served as an editor at DC Comics in the superhero line. I met him when Fabian Nicieza was relaunching the Valiant universe, and he was writing at least 2 titles there. He's authored, I don't know, somewhere, I did a quick look up, 300 to 400 individual issues, and edited some 100+ issues, and is now the editor-in-chief and founder of Ahoy Comics, and they are on wave 5 of their publishing. They are working with a lot of new talent. They are working with a lot of established talent. This is what we're trying to do, is expose you to them, but it's your responsibility to know who they are, to get yourself mentally prepared. And I will remind you at the night of the show, the way we say thank you for people coming to our panels, right, Ari? We say this every year. Thank you, shake my hand, thank you. But you know what? Go buy their books. So we will be providing links. The way you say thank you to pros is you help them continue to make comics. So what we want you to be able to do is just say, look, go take a look, go on Comixology, pick up some of their stuff, know what it's all about. I will give you one hint. Tom Pyre is a very funny guy. And one of the angles that he looks for in Ahoy Comics are comics that have some sense of humor. They don't have to be overt comedy. In fact, he was just talking to me, we were prepping for the call. He was like, one of the funniest shows, people don't think of it as a funny show, is The Sopranos, but it is humorous in its own way. So read the books that he and Jamal worked on together. So part 1 was Jamal's solo. I think we got a lot out of that. He looked at a script from David Marino, which was excellent. We talked to David. He said that was a good experience. We'll be doing that again with script review. This next part will be Jamal and Tom Pyre, and then we'll transition and they'll talk about publishing. They'll talk about editors on editing. They'll talk about what they look for in submissions. They talk about what you can do to prepare to submit to a small publisher like Ahoy. And then in the last part, it's going to be super cool. They're actually going to give us a full script of one of their comics, all of Jamal's pages, and then Tom will talk as a writer about how he completely wrote that script and then how it dimensionalized. So we'll do a side-by-side complete live annotation, and Tom is committing to that. So this is And then this is the opportunity for you to really now build a relationship with these creators. Jamal said in the call, right, Dee, if you email me, I'll email you back.
Yeah, he did. And I've already had a conversation with him. So.
And you did that, and that's your relationship to build. All of you have the same opportunity. Please take that opportunity. I am imploring you, don't just think of this purely as craft. Think of this as craft and business.
And if you get nervous to email one of these guys individually, you can always just jump on the forums. Every single one of them, every guest we have has a forum where they can get in and answer questions, and a lot of them are available most of the time. Like if you don't get a question answered right away, their email is there. But if you don't feel comfortable emailing them directly, the forms are always there. So.
Yeah, and I think also there's been some feedback which we'll talk about the forums and the things that we're asking you to do. I'll hold that toward the end, but it is worth noting that Tom has agreed to do that. We have a lot of work to do over the next 2 days to get ready for that, but I think we'll get a lot out of this conversation, this relationship. So hopefully the teams that we're bringing to you open up your career opportunities. We are now in step 7 of 15. If there was a 7.5, we would be officially at the midpoint, but we are pretty darn close to the midpoint of our anthology. Now, this is Pencil Page Roughs. Once again, I've published an article. I've opened up the forums, and Rob had noted, oh, see, I love that Joel does this. This is great. I hope you're tweeting these things. I sound relatively smart when you edit it too. When we're in the pencil roughs, and Aaron, I'm going to ask you to just talk about the importance of keeping up and posting things and why we're doing that. And we will not scold any of you in public, but you know who you are if you haven't been posting your things. Aaron, can you just talk about why it's very important for people to post and keep up with the process in the forums?
Yes. So there's a couple things. The first and foremost being, this is the pot calling the kettle black. I'm not done with my character designs yet, so call me out on it by all means. Like throw the book at me. But basically, we're trying to keep to a schedule. And one of the things that, because this is very educational forum, we're trying to get everybody to understand what it is to be on a deadline. Now, this is not school. You do not pay for this. You will not get this on your transcript. We're not going to call your mommy and give you a bad report card. But we do have a schedule and we're trying to keep up to it. So one of the main reasons that it's really good to try and post within the time that we've given for each step is that everybody else is going to be there too. So you're going to get a lot more active feedback, and you're going to get a lot more people commenting and helping you to build the best possible comic that you can, which is what we want for all of our creators. The second thing is, the more you post and the more you interact with people, the more people are going to look forward to your story. The more they're going to want to work with you, better your connections, better your comic, and then maybe invite you to theirs. So again, it's about building connections, but also it gives those of us, Chris, who's running the project, Ari and I, Buddy, who's publishing it, it gives us an idea of where we're going. If you don't post everything until the very last minute, one, we can't really give you any feedback or help you improve it, which is a lot of the reason that these steps have so much time in between. In a standard sort of industry build, you would not have this kind of time.
Right.
But we're beginners and we're learning. And part of that learning process is being able to receive feedback and make those edits. And the other thing is, if we get to the end and 7 people submit comics we weren't expecting, we can't plan for that. So building an anthology, even at the end, editing, proofing, publishing, producing it, that all takes time. We really didn't anticipate that last year, and we really ran down to the wire. I cannot describe to you how much we ran down to the wire. So we're trying to get ahead of that this year. And if you don't post your stories, and if you don't post your revisions, and if you wait until the end to post every step, then we don't know it's coming. And that, it not only kind of makes us all look unprepared and unprofessional, which is kind of what we're trying to learn how to do here, but it also means we can't make this the best it can be.
Yeah.
And as an editor of the anthology, and I think Ari would agree with me, we want this to be the best. We want your work to be the best possible thing it can be in the best possible book it can be. So help each other out, post as soon as you can. If you're late, that's fine. Just say, hey, by the way, I'm a little late. I'll get it up, in a day, 2 days, a week, whatever. Everybody's got stuff that comes up. Like I said, I'm no exception. But just make sure that you're communicating with us, because we're here to help you out, and we're just asking for that heads up.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing where, as we're doing this, as Erin noted, we are trying to build a framework that replicates professional submissions, even things like following the prompt or the page counts. We have a prompt called the time in. There was a couple of people who said, well, what if I don't want to do time in? Well, as your publisher, I said that the prompt is time in. If you can't follow directions now, later life is going to be a lot harder for you.
And that's not saying you can't create your own comic and you can't, submit and be in comic book school. It just means it doesn't apply to this anthology.
Yeah. And
so by all means, still post your stuff in the comics, in the forums. Just maybe it's not going to be in this 8-page challenge or this year's anthology. There's still, feedback and interaction and things that can happen.
Also, look at it like this. It's a challenge. As writers and as creators, that prompt should just be like the needle that says, let's go, let's do it, because you should be challenging yourself to get that prompt. It doesn't matter what the prompt is. As a creator, you should always learn that if you're hit with a challenge, like in this case, walls, okay, you have to learn how to build within that frame. And I at first I was like, time in, what the heck? What am I gonna do with that? But I made sure that I worked my tail off, and I stepped up. I got an artist that's stepping up, and everyone that's in the challenge right now that we've seen their work coming through and everything, they're all stepping up, and that's something that we want to see you guys do. It's not just about I want to create my own stuff. Like Buddy said, it is a business, and in this case, you are given a prompt. As creators, you should take pride in being able to step up to it.
The other thing is it's not that restrictive of a prompt. Like, your creators, be creative. It just has to have something to do with the time in. I know for my own comic, I had an idea that was very much about the inn and the hotel and that kind of thing. And then Buddy challenged me, said, why don't you try to write a story with Mr. Stupendous, your character from the last anthology? And to try to build the character and stuff. And I was like, how am I going to do a superhero spoof in the time? It doesn't seem to fit. And I went away and I thought about it. And then I came back and I had an idea, and it has the hotel. And DL is doing some of the art for it. And yeah, it hits the prompt, but it's still a Mr. Stupendous story. You can be creative. The prompt is the prompt, yes, and you have to be part of the prompt. You need to write to the prompt to a certain extent, but you can also be creative and figure out what story you want to tell. And you do that. And
well, and that, but that's exactly the kind of challenge you'd be faced with, Ari, if you were writing professionally. If Dark Horse, Dark Horse used to publish anthologies, and maybe they'd be like, hey, we need a Star Wars story from you. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to write a Star Wars story. Or DC just recently had a Swamp Thing anthology, and they had 8 stories in it. And they're like, write a Swamp Thing story. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to write a Swamp Thing story. And they're like, oh, and the theme is Halloween. And you'd be like, okay, I'll come up with something. And that's what you're doing with Mr. Stupendous. So that's that closely. And I think I relayed once or twice when I was writing Richie Rich. I got Richie Rich, and then I got Pirates. I think there was dinosaurs. Oh no, Pirates, Loch Ness Monster. Not all, and it was like, okay, I got to write a Loch Ness Monster story with Richie Rich. But in the end, it was great because it put a fence around it. So anyway, don't fight the fence. It is exactly the way you will be onboarded in comics. You'll probably be doing short stories. Believe it or not, I did a couple of one-page stories. I actually did a one-page X-Men story. The editor was like, we were shy a page. Can you do a one-page story on Sabretooth? And I was like, sure. She's like, by tomorrow? I'm like, definitely. And I did a one-page story on Sabretooth by tomorrow. And there you go. It's just how it happens.
It's about learning. It's about stepping up. If you have issues, if your story doesn't fit, if maybe you don't know what you want to do, jump in the forums, dude.
Yeah.
We're all here to help you. We're all happy. We had one guy submit, and I guess either he didn't quite understand the prompt or the prompt wasn't there. And I said, hey, just wondering, how are you going to fit this in? And he was like, oh, I don't know. And a bunch of people jumped on and said, well, you could do this or you could do that. And he chose how he was going to incorporate time in his story. And it didn't overhaul his story. He didn't have to create a whole new story. He had one in his back pocket, turns out, but he didn't have to. And so it's about being creative and working inside different challenges and different restraints to see how you can make it your own.
Yeah. So I think we made our point, and I think the idea now is to keep posting it, getting the getting the prompt, getting your stuff on track. For those of you who have fallen behind, it seemed like we had more people that started and people are falling off. Get back on track as your publisher. I want to see those things on getting done. That's it. This is it.
And if you're struggling, raise your hand. We're here to help out.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help people. I'm happy to jump on. I'm happy to find people, artists, inkers, colors, letters, whatever. We're here to help.
Yeah, we are here to help. So we are on pencils, step 7, but we're also starting step 0 of flash fiction. Ari, do you want to talk about that as our flash fiction editor? And just for 1 second, just give a 1-minute overview of what flash fiction is for those people that it's new to them.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. So flash fiction is basically a prose short story, and there are a number of definitions of it, but it's basically a prose short story that's under 1,000 words. We're actually giving you 2 options. We're giving you a 500-word option, which will be accompanied by 1 full-page illustration, similar to what we did in the anthology last year, or a 2-page story, which is 750 to 1,000 words, which will be accompanied by 2 illustrations, which is new. We didn't have that last year. You can do either or. And that's basically all flash fiction is. The difference with our flash fiction challenge compared to submitting prose short stories to other publishers and other magazines, usually you write the story in advance, you send it in, it either gets accepted or rejected, and that's it. Either you get publish your story, or you send it out to someone else, or you decide to self-publish it on your blog or whatever you do. If you get enough of them, you could put out your own book. But most of the time, you're submitting stories that you've already written. They're giving you either you say we've accepted your story, hopefully, or else you're getting a form letter rejection. You get a lot of those, no matter who you are. And that's it. We are asking for your stories you haven't written yet. So with the same story, the same prompt that Buddy gave for the anthology, it's the same one, the time in. You are challenged to write a short story, but right now we're in step 0. And all you have to do is get on the board, say, hey, I want to write a flash fiction story. I usually write science fiction space unicorns with dinosaurs and Richie Rich. And, you know, I'm looking for an artist, and the board might give you a feedback and say, gee, that's a lot for 500 words, but, try to find someone who can do it. And that's the first thing, is just getting on there, saying who you are. Hey, I'm a writer. I'm writing a story. I need to hook up with an artist. Or, hey, I'm an artist. I'm interested in doing these full page pinups. That's kind of like what I do. And I need a writer. Give me a story. And that's what step 0 is. And then step 1 after that, you'll be writing the rough draft of the story. And then, we'll have the roughs of the illustration and all of that kind of thing. But for now, just get on there, say you're going to do it, try to network with other writers and artists. Even if you are writing and illustrating your own flash fiction story, doing both of them, like D. Alley did for the last anthology, still get on there and say that say that you are going to do it, commit to doing it, and be involved through the feedback process that we were talking about before, and through working together with your team, with your artist and your writer. You will get a short story that is a publication worthy short story and be published in the anthology. For now, it's just meeting up and team building and that kind of thing. And actually, Buddy did some great examples of this for Marvel. What was that called, Buddy? I forgot the
So
name.
they had done the Marvel Millennial Visions oh so many years ago. It was among my first published work, and they would either ask me to say, write a quick 500 to 700 word story, and then an artist would draw a picture, or they would just say, can you draw us a picture of Elektra? And then I would go, oh, all right, what's the story behind this? So I didn't know I was writing flash fiction, but I guess that's what it was in Marvel Millennial Visions, which has never been reprinted, but you can find them in quarter bins everywhere.
There you go. Yeah, no, really, really cool stuff. So, I mean, actually, and the reason I should say that the reason why we're starting this now is because as we're moving into the penciling, we found that the writers tended to fall off a little bit after the pencil because the script is done. You've gotten your feedback, you've given off. We have to wait for the art to come back. Why not write a flash fiction story now? And then the artist will pick it up when it's that time in the schedule and do the art for it. But it's a way to keep everyone active on the board. It's a way to, if you've joined the challenge late and you don't think you're going to have time to do a full 8 pages, it's a way to jump in now. You get in something that you're starting when everybody else is starting, so you will be on time with that. And it's also a really good experience as a writer to be able to write both comics and prose. Um, Two related skills, but two very different kinds of writing. And there are a number of writers who do both. Famously, Neil Gaiman, Joe Hill, Ta-Nehisi Coates just started doing comics after doing
Danny O'Neill, there was the
there was a bunch of
Busick,
people,
Byrne,
right,
yeah.
who do both, and it's good to have both. It's good to have published credits in both, and try it out. See if you've never done prose before, give it a shot. If you've only done prose before, of course we want you. And yeah,
And I
um,
and I and I want to add that now that we have the point system, I'm going to be giving 5 points to anybody who illustrates Ari's idea of space unicorn Richie Rich. So 5 points.
The
When I
first
figure out,
artist challenge of the year,
yeah,
guys.
any artist that does it gets 5 points. They have to submit it to the message boards. Space unicorn Richie Rich.
Oh, I'm
so
putting the
I
best
think I
5
think I
on
stole that from
Instagram.
one of
It's
your
happening.
creator connections, buddy. When you are doing the initial introduction, you say, "Hey, I'm a writer. I have an idea for space unicorns on Mars, whatever your you know." And then it was one of those crazy things that
Well,
you know what you do.
Ari, you can put the TM and C next to your space unicorn Richie Rich because I think you win. Yeah, that one wins. Anyway, flash fiction is super cool, and I am so happy that we have it as part of our last anthology. I think it really enhanced things. I know Ari has some plans going forward for how to nourish the prose writers out there, and also for the artists out there who maybe they can't commit to writing a complete script and maybe they want to be a cover artist. This is a great opportunity for you to wrangle a friend who has been like, I just can't do sequentials, get them to do a single image, just like Erin did for the pirate story, which I thought was great. And she actually found something out of her notebook and then made it fit. So I think it was agility that we should all admire, and that's what we should be going for. Now, speaking of agility, I'm going to transition into, right? See, segues are for the big kids, Erin. We have not one, but 2 upcoming guests after the Tom Pyre and Jamal Igle and Ahoy Comics. We'll be having both Brian Polito, and then a couple weeks after that, we will have Mike Dolce. Now, what's important about Brian Polito and Mike Dolce is they are both self-publishers at wildly different levels, but are both very successful on Kickstarter. So I will be interviewing both of them. We will be talking about personal branding, marketing, publishing, longevity in the business, and how they each use Kickstarter, and how you can use Kickstarter or Patreon or not, because I'm a passionate advocate of not getting into something that is not good for your brand, and we're going to be asking about those. So Brian Polito, definitely a long time industry, well respected. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Mike Dolce, super indie guy, do-it-yourselfer, and much more probably relatable to you as up-and-coming creators. I think Mike has run like 6 Kickstarters for the Sire. So like he took his version of Mr. Stupendous, Ari, and has been just saying like, I'm just going to do small chunks. So he just does arcs and then funds those, whereas Brian will do something huge for tens of thousands of dollars. Mike might say like, I'm going to do one for $5,000. So I think they'll both help you with your goals. Please, please, please pay attention. Do not jump into Kickstarter without really doing your research, because it can actually harm your brand as much as it helps you in the long term. You run a bad Kickstarter, people are not going to give you money twice. So I want to.
If you have questions about that, the forums for all of the guests are open on the community boards already. So you can go in and ask a couple questions. Maybe you can go in and see what other people are asking. It helps to sort of get the conversation started beforehand, so we kind of can tell the guests what you guys are interested in listening to.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, on the spectrum, Brian can, be the headliner of a show. Mike is a regular. He has a great business mind. He shows up at every Comic-Con, has a full booth, and he can teach us a lot about that. Plus, he's taught at comic book school, and he's a great personal friend as well. So, both are going to be teaching you a little bit about agility in your career, and I think we saw that with Jamal's YouTube video, which is up now. There was a guy who quite literally was a penciler, a marketing guy, a writer, a self-publisher. I think you have to think about your career in a very agile way. All right. So last thing, community feedback. Okay, so we're just talking about the message boards. I want you to know that we are listening and we care deeply about you having a good experience, but we provide the experience that we provide. It's that simple. We are doing our best. If something can be better, and as a user you could be better, let us know. That's what the message boards are for. We've heard some grumblings about the way things are being done or not done, and I'll point out one item in a second, but the reality is, if it's not working, you don't have, we're trying our best, but you don't have to be quiet about it. Let us know, and maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we can't do something about it. But for the resource that we have, we are slowly building, and that's why we have these community meetings, so you know where we're going. And as a bunch of volunteers, things take more time, right? We're not able to just turn and make things happen, but maybe with time and volunteers and people like the tech team and people like the design team, progressively making things better, but it's incremental, but it's based on your feedback. The design team, based on the feedback that, look, I'm a terrible designer, and everyone's like, look, you can't do this, it's awful. So now we have a design team. I recognize that there's a limit to my knowledge of technical, and Kevin and Mike and James stepped up, and they can do more research than I can do all by myself. So if you feel like there's something that can be improved, let us know. If you happen to have a super skill, let us know. But I want to call out Joel Barker, who just said, I will help on social media. He says, I don't know a huge amount about it, but Joel is learning in real time. And I want to address something. Yeah, I think he's doing a great job. A couple people have mentioned, the tweet storms, and they're asking me to tweet. Let me explain something to you. If you've ever moved, and you've ever moved from one place to another, and you've ever called up a bunch of friends and said, we're having a painting party, I'm paying you in pizza and beer, and people show up and roll rollers around on your walls, you will know the importance of relationships. If you've ever run a Kickstarter and you've said, I really need to get the word out, you'll know the value of relationships. There are levels of relationships. Relationships take time. Social media is one conduit to building a relationship in a community. On the far end, we have Ari, who's got a very active community. He's got a nice following. When Ari has something to announce, he now has a base that he can announce to. Some of the other people who don't have this big of a base yet need to build that up with time. Now, why is that important? Well, this is important. Let's say you want to do a Kickstarter, or you're going to have a story published, or, Chris, you're about to self-publish something, which is true. You're about to self-publish something. You want the people in your community to accelerate it and to help you find another audience. Now, there's two ways you can do it. You can build, which takes time, which is what we're trying to help you do now, or you can buy. Build takes time, and you build good relationships with people who really do want to see you succeed. That's what we're working on now. But you may have to buy. So if you're looking to raise $10,000 on Kickstarter and you have 200 followers, you might have to buy and pay for tweets. Or you can utilize this time in this community to begin to accelerate and build those relationships. Your friends will be your first contributors to Kickstarter. After that, they will tell other people to contribute to your Kickstarter. Or, Chris, when you're about to say, I've got something that's coming out in Comixology, or I'm in the Diamond catalog this month, you need that base of people who already know who you are, who like the work you've been showing. Maybe you've been tweeting little images of the teddies or whatever. You need to build that. Now, what we've been doing recently is we're trying to build an acceleration model where we show that if we schedule one tweet, for example, Tom Pyre and Jamal are coming up, Joel puts it up there, and then we say, Chris, you retweet it this time, and Aaron, you retweet it this time, and Ari, you retweet it this time. We're starting to build an infrastructure. It might seem like a pain in the neck, but let's face it, this is going to benefit you at some point. At some point, you will need to cash in the chips and say, I need you guys to accelerate the book that's coming out. So I know that it feels a little counterintuitive, and maybe some people don't really appreciate it as much as they should. And I'm going to switch from the community, we to me. I'm telling you that this is important because when a publisher looks at your submission, they ask for your social handles. They will look and say, oh, wow, that person has 400 followers. Or they'll look at Ari and he goes 10,000 plus. Let me just tell you something. I work in marketing. There's a tool that you can go on and you can see how many of Ari's followers are both real and engaged with Ari, and they can generate a score to say, okay, Chris only has 1,000 followers and Ari has 10,000. This isn't real. Ari has 10,000, but they're mostly fake. And Chris actually has a stronger community at 1,000 than Ari has at 10,000. But Ari is very active. He has a very good community. Using it as an example, but I really want you to understand this is completely germane to your career. You need to start using social media, whether or not you like it or not. I don't want to hear I'm shy. Oh, I'm listening to. No, if you're going to be a working professional, depending on people buying your work product, this is just a necessary part of the business. They care about your base. Or you know a little bit about publishing as well. If you've ever worked with a real publisher, they're like, what's your base, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need to. They do. I mean, I went to a writing conference when those things still existed. That wasn't just a comic. It wasn't. They had comic stuff there. They had other stuff there too. It was all writing conference, and they had a book marketing guru in there, and she was talking about that. She was talking about the asset sheet that she makes for submissions, and there are a number of different columns related to social media, not just your followers, but for example, on Twitter, just a couple of years ago, it's always changing. But she also said how many people's lists you're on. They have the list on there. They look at engagement. They look at not just your tweets, but your comments and those types of things. And another thing that they said that's important is that you should focus on the ones that you're good at also, and that you shouldn't try to run. You should try to do a few, the big ones you can, but you should also, you don't need 50 of them. You should focus on building up the ones that you're going to be, like the 2
Yeah,
or 3 you're
I'm
going
with
to
you. I dropped Tumblr. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't, I couldn't figure it out. And my life didn't change in the least. I put more of my energy into Twitter, and I have 2 accounts. I have my main one for marketing and whatever. You can find it at Buddy Scalera, and you can see the comic book school. But even I'm recognizing, okay, in order for us to accelerate the community, I need to get more serious about this at Comic Book School account. So Joel is working really hard. There's a spreadsheet that Chris is maintaining. We're trying to get everybody's social handles. We're going to focus first on Twitter and Instagram. We get it. There's other ones. It doesn't mean you can't use them, but we're building our strategy around the acceleration model. The idea is, if you are in this community, you should follow everyone else in this community. Don't like question, oh, I don't know if I want to. Just do it. Just do it because you need this. And then look at what other people are doing. Look at what you can do. If you're an artist, tweet a picture that you've drawn. If you're a writer, look at what Ari, just follow Ari for a week, and you'll see how a writer can maximize the platform of Twitter. And I think that what you got to do is look at people who are doing it well. Ari's at your level. You can look at Neil Gaiman level, but you're not going to get that kind of acceleration. It's just going to depress you. Look at Ari, look at what he's doing. He's building a foundation. And when Ari has something that's coming out, he's already got that built-in community. So work with Joel. He's working very, very hard to do this for you. And when you go to submit your materials to Dark Horse or whatever, you're going to be able to submit a base that's bigger than it is today. And people will come over and paint your apartment if they really love you.
Or if you have pizza.
Even if they have pizza, there's certain people, right? Like you have your friend and you have your best friend, and you have a friend that if you said that I have a body and they'll show up with a shovel and a bag of lime, that's your best friend,
We're
right?
not talking about that. Remember, we said
all
we don't.
right. It's just we don't talk about that.
First the Sopranos, and now that. I mean, Buddy's from New Jersey.
For those of you who don't know, Buddy's in Jersey.
And people are gonna start asking questions, Buddy.
But the truth of the matter is it is very important, not just for the craft, but for the business. So definitely take the time, build that community. Like we're like shuffling around. It's like wow.
Somebody backstage is pushing buttons.
That was awesome. I love that. I'm going to open it up to my counsel. Did we miss anything that we wanted to be able to cover within this? Anything from the community that came up in the questions? By the way, thank you for the comments. Interview challenge. That's right. Rob had suggested something that we're going to have to work this out. I don't know how it will work. I'll talk about it here in real time, where he had this idea, like, why don't we use some of the free bandwidth that we have on YouTube, where you as creators interview other creators the way I interview Jamal or interview Tom Pyre. We don't know how that's going to work, but that's definitely something that Rob brought up, and I went, oh, that's a good idea. That gives each person an opportunity to use a little FaceTime, use the platform of YouTube. And let me just reiterate something that I say over and over again. Chris, what's the name of your publishing company?
Tales Beyond.
There you go. Chris can go out there and tell everybody and build a business right off our boards. Kathy Kirch is a great editor, super smart. If you want to employ Kathy and she wants to recruit on the message boards, go. This is a commercial endeavor. So go out there and you can self-promote.
Put it on the forums. We all want to support you. If you have a comic book coming out, put it on the forums. Even if it's not in the challenge, even if it's not published by Comic Book School, we're part of the community. We're your friends. We want to support you. Let us know where it is. Let us tweet it, push it on Instagram, push it on our social channels. If we push you, you push us, we all do better. Plus, we want to know what you write. We want to know what you're reading because that's fun for us. It's about the comics.
Yeah. So some of the recent challenges, and I'll be posting mine probably later today, what did you buy or what's on your read pile? Just post it. We're comic book fans. Post it in the message boards and then use Twitter to accelerate it and drive it back. And that's the kind of stuff you can do as a writer. Oh, my comic book with Andy Siebert. That's on your read pile. So, I mean, look at that. That's a great example. Like a writer can take a picture of comics that they're about to read, and that's something visual. You can put it out there. Please use the message boards, build your base. So thank you for that. Hey, Sebastian, how you doing? what else do we have? Is there anything? I'm going to go round robin. Anything that we didn't cover, Chris?
Not to my knowledge. Seriously, the community is as robust as we make it. So if everyone's just participating, the experience, the sky's the limit. I mean, regardless of what's what tools we have on the websites or anything like that, it's like the feedback that you give and take and everything is only as good as everyone that's willing to share it. And I took a couple hours just reading through everybody's scripts from the 2 steps ago or whatnot, just to see what everyone's scripts were like. And I sat down, I spent a couple hours reading, and then I gave full feedback for everyone that had a script up there. And I felt like, wow, this story is gonna kick ass. I'm telling you right now, I cannot wait to read AA's story. OMG, that thing sounds amazing. And like reading through the script, I'm already gushing because I know, especially with where his head is at and the artistic talent that he's got attached to it, it's like this is going to truly be something awesome.
Yeah.
And you don't know that kind of stuff unless you're willing to take a little time out, give some feedback to the community, and do your part.
Right.
Thank you, Chris. Your story is great too. People need to get onto that. There's all Chris manages. It's like he has more pages than the rest of us, even though it's tight and light pages. He's got so much story. It is action packed.
Big fun.
Big fun.
No, yeah.
All right, that sounds good. Ari, since we got you live on camera here, any thoughts? Anything we failed to cover?
Not really anything, but just something I was thinking about as the conversation was going on. And I think I heard this originally in one of Buddy's panels, which is the freelancers triangle, which is there's three angles, 3 vertices of the triangle, and if you want to be a successful freelancer, and the first one, of course, is you got to be good. You got to be good at what you do. The second one is you got to be on time. You got to hit the deadlines, and we're talking about that. Notice when Buddy was talking about that, writing these stories, and he said, "Oh yeah, they called me and they said they need a 1-page story. Someone dropped off, and it's like, can you do it by tomorrow?" And he said, "Yes. I'll figure out how to do it later." But he said yes, and he got it in, and that's why that's part of the reason why you keep getting more work. You could be the best writer in the world, and if you said no, then they might not call you the next time, right? So you got to be good, you got to be on time, and you got to be nice, right? You got to be somebody who people, because people are going to hire your friends and these types of things that we're talking about, building relationships too. And the things that we're talking about here, we're working on all 3 of these. You got to be good. We got all the educational stuff and the feedback and all that part of stuff. You got to be on time. We talked a lot about the deadlines and how we're structuring the challenge and all that kind of thing. And the building relationships, you got to be nice. So your friends will work with you and hire you and that kind of thing. We just talked about that too. So it's really, when we say the craft and business of making comics, it's really bringing you to all 3 of those things that are what they teach you as the freelancer's triangle, what you need if you're going to be a successful freelance professional. So,
yeah, no, I agree. And Ari, I want to just give you the triangle. It's been a while. Editors will think of you as good, fast, or cheap. You can only ever have 2 points on the triangle. If you're good and fast, you ain't cheap, right? So there's a couple different ways to think about it: good, fast, and cheap. And then, as you had noted, right in the center of that triangle is likability. Like, how easy are you to work with? And nobody likes a curmudgeon. One of the things that's always surprising is when people go like, "Oh, I was just an artist alley and I met Ron Garney. He's like the nicest guy in the world." And he goes, "Right, because likability matters." So good, fast, and cheap. Editors will always, and publishers will always think of you with that trifecta in mind, but they will ask, how's that guy to work with, right? So good, fast, and cheap is the way most editors and publishers will think of you, and then they will do their homework and say, what's it like to work with D. Alley? They'll be like, oh, she's cool. And then that's the secret handshake. That's what happens. Remember I told you got to close the pub? That's what they talk about. But thank you for bringing that up, Ari, and I find you very likable.
You don't have to drink.
No,
but
I
you
don't.
should.
I don't drink alcohol, so I just closed the bar. But Ari, you know what I'm saying, pal. Aaron, who also goes by D Alley. I just gotta just call you by what I know you by.
It's funny too, because for almost an entire year you called me Red. Nothing but Red. I
Red.
go and put my name out as D Alley, and now you can't remember my name for the life of me.
Do you? Yeah. Well, I'm stupid.
No, you just like to call me lots of things. So here's the deal. We've got this great comic book school community. It's, like Chris said, only going to be as good as what we put into it. You know, we're volunteering to do this for free. You know, you're coming in, you're not paying anything. We're not getting paid to be here, but we're here because we love comics. And we're creating a challenge to learn from. So that's something we can do as a community to all get better and all rise and all push each other and become friends. But at the same time, this is just a community. It's a school because it's educational, but it's not mandatory. Like, we can get on here and get passionate and, you know, let's face it, most of us have lived in some form of New England or have family in New England. We know that sort of, what did you call it, Mike? Jersey Sunday. But like, if you're not having a good time, like, speak up and be like, dude, you guys are so strict about this. We'll be like, oh, okay, well, why? This is why. Or, hey, you know what? If you don't want to submit the comic on time, if you don't want to do the steps, you don't have to. Do your own thing. Post to the comics, post to the forums anyway. Say, look, I don't want to do the theme, but I made this comic. Cool. Do it.
Right.
You won't be in this anthology, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. You know, you want to make a 12-page comic? Do it. Do whatever you feel you want to do. We're about making comics and we're about having fun doing it. So by all means, come in, contribute what you want to contribute, and get out of it what you need to, because that's what we're here for. So that's
that was good. Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
I'm working on it all day.
Well said. Well said. Listen, and on that note, I can't do anything to say it any better than that. So I will just say thank you all for joining us. Keep up with the community. We will see you on Tuesday for the live chats. Please get your questions and comments into the message boards if we haven't said it enough. That's where we'll be seating your questions. So if you really do have a question for Ahoy Publishing, Tom Pyre, Jamal Eigel, or any of our upcoming guests, please put it in there. You guys are the best. A big heart out to all of you. I love working with all of you, and have a great week. See you guys on Tuesday.